This is a linear equation that has some fractions in it, so I think we all agree that we'd like to just get rid of the fractions as quickly as possible. And don't forget that we can get rid of a fraction by basically multiplying by the denominator. So if I had a fourth in my problem, like I do here, then I could multiply that by 4, and it would cancel out with the 1/4. Now the trick is, remember with equations, I have to do the same thing to both sides. So if I multiply both sides of this equation by 4, then that 1/4, as part of that operation, that 1/4 is going to go away. It's 4 times 1/4 is going to be 1. So if I want to save steps, I should look across all the denominators and think about what can I multiply by that might kill off more than one of these guys. And so if I think of it that way, even the x is sort of seems different, but the 8 and the 4, right, the common denominator between 8 and 4 is just 8. So, so actually I'm going to multiply both sides by 8 and save myself a step. So multiply both sides by 8. And I just have to put up with the x that's in there for the moment. The key is I'm not trying to do all of this at once. I don't have to find the secret best way to get this in one step. I can just do anything legitimate, in other words, something to both sides, and as long as that, I really didn't mean to write it like that, so times 8. So as long as I do the same thing to both sides, it doesn't change anything, and if what I do helps, then eventually I'll get to the right answer. So I've got to distribute this multiplication. So I'll have 8 times a fourth, so that's 8 times 1 over 4. Remember, this is really 8 over 1. So 8 times 6 is 48. 1 times x is x. So 8 times 6 over x is just 48 over x. And on this side I have 5/8 times 8. So I could write that 40 over 8 and simplify, but I know the 8's are going to cancel out, so that's going to be 5. Now notice that 8/4 is actually 2. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So my equation now looks like this. And so it's not solved yet, but it looks a lot better than it did in the first place. So while I'm here, I should always do adding and subtracting steps as soon as I see them, because those are always easier to do than multiplication and division steps. So here, if I subtract 2 from both sides, for example, my equation will become 48 over x equal, and then 5 minus 2 is 3. So now, let's say I have a very simple equation, and I can just multiply both sides of this by x. The x in the x, this is x over 1 times 48 over x, so those x's are going to cancel out. I'll have 48 on the left-hand side, and I have 3 times x on the right-hand side. And so my last step could be divide by 3 or multiply by a third, however you like to think about it. So I need to know what a third of 48 is. That'll be the same thing as x. And a third of 48 is just 16. Notice that because this is a whole number, it doesn't really cost me much pain to check. You could always check, but sometimes when you get an answer like 7/13, it's hard to make yourself check this. But checking is just a matter of writing 1/4 plus, I'm putting the 16 in place of the x, so 6 over 16. And doing this arithmetic, this would be the left-hand side of the equation. And if I'm correct, I should get 5/8 eventually, but let me just go ahead and do it. Common denominator between 4 and 16 is 16, so I can multiply top and bottom of this fraction by 4. So 4 times 1 over 4 times 4. That's the same fraction, just written in a different form, so that's 4 over 16. Of course, 6 over 16 already has that denominator. That's 10 over 16. And 10 and 16 both have a factor of 2. So 10 is 2 times 5. And 16 is 2 times 8. And that's what I'm looking for to simplify a fraction. I have to have a common multiplicative factor on the top and on the bottom. And since that cancels out, I'll have 5/8 as the result. So it is true that if you put 16 in this equation for x, then you get a true equation.